Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunner Blog. James, a very good afternoon to you from good morning to you from good afternoon here. There we go.
Good morning to you from good afternoon.
Yeah.
No, other way round. Yes, you were right.
I was both right and wrong. It is afternoon here. It's morning there. And good, whatever time of the day it is to wherever you are, whoever you are, whenever anyone's listening.
They're unlikely to be listening live, I would suspect,
unless
they're outside of either of our windows.
Well, mine, potentially, that I'm on the first floor of my house. I don't know, are you in like a condominium on the 78th floor or something like that?
No, I've moved now. I'm now in like a basement apartment of a house.
Okay.
Below ground.
Like a mole man.
Like a supervillain or indeed a mole man.
A mole man, yeah.
How are you doing? I've been in touch with the UK a lot in the last. I know you're not in the UK. But good save.
Yeah, absolutely. That was like top drawer. That was like David Seaman against Sheffield United. That save.
Well, it looks like it's in, and he claws it out.
Just claws it away at the last second.
Let's say I've been in touch with people back home. I'll say in the last 12 hours because of the England match.
Yeah,
I had a great many friends and family who stayed up or woke up in the middle of the night to watch that game. Did you see anything of it?
I watched the highlights of the goals and stuff like that, but it was on too late, like a 1 a.m. kickoff. And, Sunday's a day where you might have a glass of wine or two and a couple of beers, particularly when the weather is warm. So I watched the Norway-Brazil game, but I did not stay up for the England-Mexico game. But based on what everyone's saying, I might have missed one of the games of the tournament so far.
I think that's probably right. As always, you've got to be conscious of kind of an English bias in any sort of native reporting. But it was an incredibly dramatic game. 2 a.m. kickoff by the time it actually started.
It was delayed.
Yeah, there was an hour's delay. So that, I imagine, was a body blow to those who were pushing through. But,
just four more pints. I'll get the kickoff.
Yeah, they forced a couple more down, but I think it was worth it. I think those who did stay up considered it worth it because it was an incredibly dramatic match. I mean, the setting was incredible. Obviously, the Azteca, a lot of history there for England as well. Mm-hmm. You've got a home nation who are going to put absolutely everything into it, and then a lot of on-field drama in major incidents, red card, two penalties, England scoring twice in a minute. It really, really did have everything. So, yeah, I mean, my feeling this morning is probably it's the most memorable England World Cup game possibly since 1998 in Argentina. Like in terms of it sort of being a spectacle and something that will live on. Mm-hmm. I really think it is. And sad to see Mexico go out on the one hand, because I think they've been great and, they bring so much to the tournament. But a really, really good result for England and not one I particularly anticipated. I mean, I always looked at this route for England and saw them having to play at the Azteca in the altitude against a good Mexico team and thought, maybe this is where we come a cropper. So, yeah, intrigued to see where we go from here. Well, it will be Norway, won't it?
Yeah, it will be Norway. Yeah, I mean, we were chatting a bit last night before the game, and you said you thought Mexico might have a good chance in this one. I mean, let's do what we do every week, it seems, on every episode of the podcast, Declan Rice Watch. After being in terrible pain last week, according to Thomas Tuchel, he played the full game. There was a clip doing the rounds because I get the highlights from the soccer subreddit, right? And it just has all the various clips and bits and bobs. I particularly enjoyed the Mexico coach shouting at Anthony Gordon, and he went, "Gordon!" And Anthony Gordon turned around and he went, "Fuck you!" And then just burst out laughing. I thought that was brilliant. But there was a clip right at the end where England are obviously camped in their own box. I think Mexico have a corner right at the death. There's all this injury time. I looked at the stats after the sending off. It looked like Mexico had something like 84% possession, 10 shots. It was backs to the wall stuff from England. And they get the ball clear, and then the final whistle goes. And the title of this video is England Players React at the Final Whistle. And I could see Declan Rice, and I was expecting, the full platoon fall to his knees, just exhausted after doing another 90 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes with 10 men, after all the issues that he's had. And what does he do when the final whistle goes? He breaks into a massive sprint and runs towards the halfway line, and then, has a big jump in the air to celebrate. This man is just unstoppable.
Either that or those epidurals are pretty effective. It was backs to the wall stuff. As a connoisseur of centre half play, you would have been, I think, delighted to see that Dan Burn made 2 headed clearances from the edge of his own penalty area that both crossed the halfway line.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of incredible sort of Alamo stuff. But yeah, Declan Rice, I think I saw Tim Stillman maybe tweet this rather succinctly, that he did what he has done for Arsenal in the last few months too, which was kind of find the reserves to do just enough to ensure his team got the result they needed. It wasn't necessarily Declan Rice at his free-flowing, pain-free best, but it was sufficient.
Sure.
And he was, it was a Bellingham night, really, for England.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the outstanding player and scored the first 2 goals. But Rice certainly played his part. Bukayo Saka played his part as well.
Got an assist.
A really nice assist, wasn't it?
Yeah.
From him?
Yeah, very well done. And Bellingham is just, I know there's always discussion around him and debate around him, but I think he's a game-changing player. He is one of those guys, isn't he, that when it really goes for him, it's so eye-catching, and he's got the ability to finish. 2 goals in a minute. It's sort of like that time we scored against Spurs, if you remember, the Fabregas goal straight from kickoff, where I think Mexico got caught in the ball and England worked it forward very, very quickly, and Bellingham scores. I mean, to score 1 away from home at the Azteca, given all the talk about altitude, I did enjoy all the journalists going for a run and saying, it's very hard to run at this altitude. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's very funny. Camille said to me, I was telling her about the altitude, and she was like, well, I've been to Mexico City and I was fine. And I was like, were you playing elite sport at the time? She was like, no, I was just on my holidays, but I didn't have any issues. I was like, I don't think that's the same, Camille.
Yeah, there is probably a little more effort required to run around a football pitch for 90 minutes than go from
more exertion,
taco bar to tequila bar to whatever.
But Declan Rice's lumbar spine, I think, is probably in about the same state this morning as Harry Kane's voice. Have you by any chance seen Harry Kane's post-match interview?
I have. It was very, 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 very funny.
He didn't have a great voice at kickoff. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
He's never been a particularly compelling speaker, but by full time, my word,
it was very funny. All right, yeah, he'd obviously been doing some shouting and cajoling and what have you.
Yes,
it's why
you sound like an old squeeze box. Basically.
Yeah, something like that. Listen, we've all been there. We've all been at the football. We've all, shouted and screamed and sang songs, and then the next day your voice is not what it was. But yeah, that was very entertaining. I mean, have you any other sort of observations about England, the England team? This is a big win. It really is.
Yeah.
A very big win. And I think Norway will be a big test for England as well, because we can talk about them now in a minute, because I thought they were really, really good against Brazil. But, it's a real confidence booster, isn't it? Because people were talking about this one as like, it could be the end of the road for England. Mexico are doing well. They've got to play at altitude, all this sort of stuff. But they came through it in a very admirable way, especially when you consider, playing for so long with 10 men. And I don't know we'll talk about red cards and stuff in a minute. I can't imagine 10 Downing Street are going to be on the phone to Gianni Infantino to get Gerald Quansah reinstated for the next game, but I don't really think he can have any complaints about that red card.
No. And actually, I did think most of the major calls were sort of right. The Kane penalty concession was, is that the sort of incident where a VAR is required to intervene? It was very, very, very subtle, but by the letter of the law, yes, he does kick through the guy's leg. The Quansah one, yeah, he's out of control and he's very, very high. Was the referee a bit of an issue in the game? Because I did see people talking about that a bit, or was that just because of, when you're down to 10 men and you are playing backs to the wall, it kind of feels like everything's going against you? I think there's an element of that. And actually, it wasn't so much the on-field decisions that were the problem for England. It was the VAR reviews. That was where they were punished most. On-field, the referee did not give a red card. On-field, the referee did not give a penalty. It was an Australian referee, which I think put some English fans back up before kickoff. I think they were looking for trouble.
Jared Gillett, was it?
I think it's a really big win. And actually now I look at, I thought England would probably go out last night, and were it not for those 2 Bellingham goals in a minute, that might well have been what happened. I now look at the draw and think, of course, they're hard games. Norway's going to be really tough. And then I think, is it maybe one of Argentina or Colombia in a potential semi-final after that? It's tough, but it's probably the more favourable side of the draw, you would say, at this point in time. So I think they've got a really good chance of getting to the final. I think it's a possibility for them now. So yeah, very intriguing. But I mean, Norway would be tough. I mean, Martin Odegaard was pulling out the flicks and tricks, wasn't he, in the last 20 minutes of that game? Yeah,
I enjoyed this game actually. Brazil missed a penalty early on. Bruno Guimaraes missing a penalty with a stutter run-up, which is becoming the sort of the bête noire, or one of the bêtes noire. I don't know how you pluralize that. Of this tournament, there's obviously one or two that are bigger, but a stutter run-up. He had his penalty saved. I have to say, I will say this, because I want to give Norway credit, because I thought they were really, really good. And played the game very intelligently. But I also thought Brazil were fucking terrible. I couldn't really recognize this as a Brazil team. Do you know what I mean? And it's not that I expect them to go and have 60, 70% possession against Norway, because I think that does the opposition a disservice. But I did sort of expect them to have like a period or two within the game where they were on top, where they were dominant. And it just didn't happen. And there was something so pedestrian and uninspired and unimaginative about the kind of football that they were playing. Because I think for all of us, regardless of what age anyone is listening to this, you grow up with Brazil in the World Cup and you expect a certain something, don't you? From the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s, there's flair and there's skill and there's panache and there's a drive and there's a desire to make things happen. And they have some of the best players in the world and have always had some of the best players in the world. And this was not like Brazil at all.
Well, I mean, I don't wish to be cruel to one of our own, but does it not tell a bit of a story that Gabriel Martinelli basically started in the number 10 position for Brazil in a last 16 game? I mean, he wouldn't get a look in, I don't think, in that position at Arsenal.
And I don't think he was actually bad or anything.
No,
but
I
absolutely take your point on that, yeah.
But it's not what we associate with the great Brazil teams, is it?
No, it's not. And yeah, I mean, listen, Lucas Paquetá is a decent player, but again, even if he was fit, he's not a Ronaldinho, is he? Far from it. So,
but yeah, I mean, when they did carve out opportunities, they came up against a pretty inspired goalkeeper between the sticks for Norway. Is it Nyland? I think was very, very good. I also think Norway do deserve a lot of credit. I think they've had a really good tournament, and obviously in Haaland, they just have one of the sport's outstanding players. Yeah. It's easier to say it when he's not wearing blue, I think.
It absolutely is. And I'm in this sort of weird love-hate space with Erling Haaland. You know, when he plays for City and when he does what he does for Man City, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, this guy again. Yeah. But, you know, I sort of miss personality to an extent in football. You know, I think players have become a bit more robotic or machine-like, and the game has become a lot more structured and organized, and the room for expression is not what it was. I think he is one of those guys that, you know, if he's on your side, you're absolutely loving him. And if you're not, and he goes against you and he does, you know, what he does against you, you know, it's easy to dislike him. But I sort of at the back of it, I do like him a bit, you know. And listen, there'll be people listening to this who don't care for Erling Haaland one bit and probably don't care for me saying that I quite like him. Give me till August. I'll work this one out myself, you know. But I think what is unquestionable is that he is an unbelievable, ridiculous finisher, because he was sort of not really involved in the game. I remember checking the stats, you know, halfway through the second half, and I think he'd like attempted 8 passes and, you know, was sort of floating about. And then he scores that goal that puts Norway 1-0 up. He got away from Gabriel. That's a battle he won in this game. And then the second goal, like, he just makes that look so easy. And it's not. It's ridiculous what he did there. You know, I know he just sort of picked it up and lashed it into the bottom corner, but if it was that easy, people would be doing it all the time, you know? He's absurdly talented and just an amazing goal scorer. So I don't know. This is not an Erling Haaland loving. I think it would be more interesting to talk about Martin Odegaard, who I thought looked a bit more like his old self. And if I have worries and people have worries about Declan Rice, after all the football that he's played, I'm sort of looking at Odegaard in this tournament and thinking, yeah, this could be really good for him to sort of go a bit further and get more football under his belt and to regain proper match fitness and form and rhythm. You know, he was winding up Neymar, towards the end of the game, flicks and tricks, like you're saying, just keeping the ball, really deft bits of control. And, you know, there was a bit where Neymar got a bit cheesed off with him and clattered through the back of him, and Odegaard just sort of rolled over a couple of times and laughed. I want to see that Martin Odegaard more often for Arsenal next season, you know, and I think if this World Cup helps him get there, then, you know, we should be happy about that.
Yeah, I think he had a decent game, played well, has had a good World Cup, actually. Maybe should have done slightly better with the chance that fell his way in the first half.
Yeah.
It was quite a decent opportunity.
Good save, but, you know.
Yeah, good save. But there's also been a sort of emphatic kind of rebuttal from the Odegaard camp this week about reports of him agreeing a move. Was it to Turkey? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, listen, we've had one of those transfers go through.
Come true.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Listen,
the stock clock is only right
once a day. Know? The 12-hour clock.
Famously once a day. So, yeah, look, for the time being, it really does look as if he's going to be staying at Arsenal and part of plans next season, and we all want to see a better, sharper Martin Odegaard. And he seems like one of the few players who could benefit from this World Cup if it helps kind of tune him up for the start of next season. On Norway go, and I agree about Haaland. I mean, that second goal, I think he could barely run by that point in the game. So he just kind of cracks off the shot from the edge of the box and finds the bottom corner. So Haaland against England, who is eligible to play for, of course, will be an interesting one.
It will. And Haaland, Messi and Mbappe lead the goal-scoring charts with 7 goals each.
They've all kind of turned up. I mean, that's one thing you do have to say about this World Cup. I mean, that the stars, by and large, have shown out. Yeah,
exactly. Kane for England obviously scored, I think, 6.
6 now,
Ousmane Dembele as well with a few goals for France.
Hopefully we bid farewell to Cristiano Ronaldo at World Cup.
That would be good. I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I'm Team Spain for this one. I know there's an Arsenal contingent there. It looks maybe like Mikel Merino's the most likely to get minutes in this game. I don't know if he's going to start or not. But, Zubamendi and Raya are there as well. I think we'd all like to see that, wouldn't we? We'd all like to see it. But, if it happens, there'll probably be, somebody calling up Gianni Infantino and, overturning the result.
Let's not forget, he was supposed to be suspended himself, I think, for the first couple of games, Ronaldo.
That's right.
And that was kind of the first major deviation from FIFA. I do have this sort of creeping dread because, the next World Cup is hosted, I think it's Spain, Morocco.
Is it not Saudi Arabia? 2030?
Portugal. No, that's
2034.
The one after, I believe. Let's check this.
Okay.
World Cup 2030. Yes, it's Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, and there will also be games in Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay.
What?
Yes, it's as insane as it sounds, to be honest. Basically, from what I understand, they awarded it to Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, but they were kind of due to award it to South America. So in a kind of gesture to mark the centenary of the first World Cup, they are hosting like a trio of games in South America, including Uruguay, where the first World Cup final possibly took place. Anyway, it's another of FIFA's
loads
masterpieces.
Of old bollocks, yeah.
But I have a slight dread that 45-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo will still insist on playing up front for Portugal in that tournament.
Will be allowed. He'll be allowed play. That's the thing, I
know. Anyway, I feel like we're with this talk of FIFA.
Yeah,
we are working our way round to today's other big game, which is obviously the US against Belgium, and the rather extraordinary news, in my opinion, that currently, at the time of recording, which is about 8 hours before kickoff, currently Flo Balogun is permitted to play, but as we speak, Belgium are pushing back on that. So who knows where we end up?
No, I think they absolutely should push back on that, because this is, I think whatever happens at this World Cup, whatever else happens in the final, this is going to be the biggest story to emerge, to have happened at this World Cup. And this is not a World Cup that has come without controversy already. You look at the way the Iranian team were treated. You look at the Somalian referee who was not allowed in, who didn't get a visa to get in. There has been, fans denied visas, people not allowed into various countries. I think this is an absolute disgrace. And I just want to say, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, in no way is this critical of Flo Balogun in any way. I feel quite sorry for him, actually, because he's become the centerpiece of something which is just so brazenly wrong and corrupt through no fault of his own, really. And at this point, it doesn't really matter whether you think it was a red card or not. My personal view is that it was a red card. I don't think the red card was unjustified. It's a bit unfortunate. It's a bit unlucky, but I think it's a red card. And he should be suspended. I do too,
by the way, I should just say. I do think we're in the minority on that.
I agree.
I think he is unlucky, but I think it is... I don't think intent, when you read the wording of the law, intent is not really relevant.
No, I mean, look at what happened with that Qatari player in the game against Canada, right? So he made a tackle. He got a yellow card. The guy whose name I forget now, and I apologize for that, suffered a really, really serious injury. He had a broken leg, the Canadian player. I should just get his name, shouldn't I? Because that seems the right thing to do. Canadian player broken... If I could type, it would be fucking great as well. Yeah, Ismail Kone. So he suffered a really bad injury, right? So on the basis of that injury being suffered, the referee was advised to go to the screen and look at the incident again, and he was given, he changed the yellow card to a red card, and Kone was given a 5-game ban, not just a 3-game ban, a 5-game ban because of the consequences of that tackle, which, you know, might have been a bit of a reckless tackle, but he didn't mean to break the guy's leg, right? Similarly, Flo Balogun, they're both competing for the ball. It is unfortunate. He lands on the guy's Achilles, on the back of his leg, crunches his ankle into a horrible position. He doesn't mean it, but I still think that's a red card. And I think if that happened to any Arsenal player in any game, most of the people listening to this would say, that's a red card. We want to see that punished with a red card because look what he did to Bukayo Saka's ankle, right? Mm-hmm. But whether you think it's a red card or not, whether you agree with me or James or not, the idea that this suspension has been overturned because of political interference is just absolutely wrong on every level. It completely taints this tournament, the sporting integrity of the tournament. And it's not the only thing. As I said, there are things that have happened before that have done that as well. We have the President of the United States talking in extraordinary terms. I'm not going to play any of it because I don't want to inflict that on anybody. But, you know, he says, I know all there is to know about sport, then says he doesn't know that a red card means a suspension. But he's basically said he called up Gianni Infantino, asked for a review, political pressure was applied, and the host nation have been the beneficiary of an act of just wanton cowardice from Gianni Infantino. Like, he is the man at the top of the organization that purports to love and protect the game of football, and he's actually too cowardly or too supplicant to Donald Trump to uphold one of the basic laws of the game, one of the basic rules of the game. So there are different rules for the United States team than there are for every other team. And it's bullshit and it's wrong. And Infantino is the most pathetic, feeble little man. And this is just a disgrace. And again, this is not about Folarin Balogun, who I feel sorry for. He's at the center of this storm. He didn't ask for any of this. He was unfortunate in a tackle. And now all this is going on. Like, you know, the idea that any government, any head of state can change the rules of a sporting competition, tournament, whatever it is, for their own benefit in the middle of the fucking tournament, just so openly, like, what are we even fucking doing here?
Yeah, it's a real... Personally, I think it's a real shame. I actually feel quite sad about this because... and I think a lot of American soccer fans will feel similarly conflicted because against the odds, the US had sort of managed to be kind of a feel-good host nation story in this tournament. And I think this damages that enormously. Yeah. I think it hugely undermines it. And I think the world will go back to their much more comfortable and familiar position of rooting against the States. I think that you've got to remember this incident, whether you think it's a red card or not. And there are many highly professional, respected, intelligent people who think it was a deeply unfair red card, coaches, players, and otherwise. It had been reviewed not only by a referee, but by video officials. It had been determined to be a red card. It's not been rescinded, notably. Mm-hmm. The suspension has been suspended by a year. So there's no sense of this card being revoked or admitting of kind of wrongdoing by the officials. It's literally just shifting the goalpost to allow him to play. Yeah,
Trump, by the way, saying, this referee is very suspect. You know, what the
that's awful. I mean,
absolutely. You know. Like, he doesn't know anything about this fucking referee. He doesn't know anything about football. He doesn't know anything about the game or the rules or anything like that. And like you say, the red card has not been rescinded. And I think the mechanism through which FIFA have suspended this suspension doesn't really stack up from what I've read either. You know, it's an arbitrary decision. Infantino is doing Trump a favor. That's what this is. And this is a relationship, I think we can say, that, you know, if you were trying to plead innocence, would not stand up to any scrutiny. You know, FIFA have taken, I think The Athletic did a big piece on this before the World Cup about how FIFA have offices which are more or less unmanned in one of Trump's buildings, right? They're paying rent for offices they don't use to Donald Trump. That's essentially a bribe. This man, Infantino, invented a peace prize because Trump was sad that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. So he invented his own peace prize to give to him in a ceremony that has copper fastened this relationship between Infantino and Trump. So even if there's no plausible deniability here, you know, you could not convince anyone that this was not Infantino doing Trump a favor because he was asked. And whether you think there might have been anything more nefarious about, you know, how it was asked or how it was presented to Infantino, that's irrelevant. You know, he lie down with dogs, you get fleas. And this is just a disgraceful situation.
Yes. And you know, plausible deniability is not really part of Trump's modus operandi, is it? I mean, everything's pretty flagrantly open. And I think, unfortunately, this probably is exactly what it appears to be. And listen, it's not to say the tournament had been perfect until this point. You know, you bring up issues around immigration, and I think some of the officiating as well in games is certainly open to question or debate.
Fuck that France-Paraguay game. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. But in a lot of respects, you know, I talk about the big stars turning up. I think the football really has delivered, and I think the US have been a really positive football story within that. But this really, 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 really takes the sheen off it, and it stinks, to be honest with you. Yeah, it stinks.
What do you make of Maurizio Pochettino, by the way? Because I think, you know, I read Thomas Tuchel, I read Stolbakken, the Norwegian coach. If I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, I apologize. And they're saying this is bad. You can't do that. Why don't the rules apply? You know, I saw Bradley Barcola get a yellow card for nothing the other day in a France game. Michael Olise got a yellow card for nothing. Declan Rice apparently got a soft yellow card early on in the game last night. Like, Tuchel's point is, well, where does it stop? Like, you know, I think Maurizio Pochettino's credibility as a football coach is hugely undermined because of the way he responded to this, you know. I think we can all understand he would want his star striker available for a game like this, a round of 16 game in the World Cup, right? Against Belgium, is a really tough game. But I also think if you have any integrity, both personally and within the game of football itself, you have to say that the mechanism through which this has happened is just fundamentally wrong. And for him to sort of come out and praise FIFA for doing what they've done, I think is really shameful for him as well, because every other coach that I've read and anybody with standing in the game has, you know, called this out for what it is. It's just wrong and corrupt. And yeah, I think Pochettino is stained by this as well.
Yeah, I think it's really disappointing that he's just come out and said, I think he said, we celebrate this decision at a time when everyone else is in the game is kind of querying the integrity of the competition. I think that is disappointingly narrow in its focus. So it feels Belgium are now kind of appealing, but there's not really any formal precedent or structure for that appeal. So interestingly, Belgium's statement about it said, we will continue to fight this over the coming hours, days, weeks and months. So I think that suggests A, a realism about the prospect of this changing again before kickoff, but B, kind of implies this could go all the way in terms of sort of court of arbitration for sport or whatever it might be. Like, this could get big, and the outcome of this match between the US and Belgium and we talk about asterisks a lot in the Premier League when it comes to Man City, could have a pretty big asterisk against it.
It certainly could.
And again, I think that's such a shame because Balogun's a good player and he's important to the US, but this is not an outstanding Belgium team. I think there's every chance, especially with the home crowd behind them, the US could have beaten Belgium without Balogun. And I think they would have earned enormous credit in doing so. And now it just feels like if they do, and God forbid Flo Balogun scores in this game, which sort of feels crushingly inevitable, doesn't it? I think it's going to provoke absolute uproar, and quite right. I mean, Belgium must be furious.
No, they must be, and they should be. And I think, anybody who loves the game of football, and we all know that you have to sort of close your eyes or stick your head in the sand sometimes, or you're dealing with levels of moral compromise or cognitive dissonance, whatever it is, right? We all do it. We have to do it to varying degrees with our own club, and have had to do it with some of our own players in recent times, right? We all understand that. But I just don't understand how anybody who really says they love football is justifying political interference in a decision like this. You just can't do it. It doesn't matter if it's fucking Donald Trump or Keir Starmer or fucking whoever. It should not happen. It's wrong, and nobody should accept it. And the idea that you can compromise yourself to the extent where you go, well, this is good for my team, I'll allow this. Please just, think about what it would be like if the shoe was on the other foot. You would not be accepting of something like this at all.
That's quite right. And I think this World Cup, like all World Cups in recent history, to be honest with you, it did come with some degree of kind of implicit moral or ethical compromise, we always knew that was going to be part of this World Cup. And people say, oh, you got to separate politics from football. And I think that's almost impossible to do most of the time. But I understand the principle. But then what do you do when politics and politicians are interfering directly with sporting matters? Yeah. Like that for me crosses a red line. And that's what UEFA said this morning. I think this crosses a red line. I feel shit about it, to be honest with you, Andrew. I feel like it's such a shame and it compromises the tournament.
100%. 100%. I don't know that we really need to add any more to that, to be honest. It is a shame. Maybe not unexpected as well. But yeah.
I think we all expected it before the tournament, and then as the tournament's gone on, the president's kept an unusually low profile in football matters. But that's all just changed.
It's gone now. It is gone now. Yeah. Well, listen, we'll see what happens later on in that game. Spain, Portugal later, USA versus Belgium. So, a couple of
Leandro Trossard, by the way.
Yes, Leandro Trossard. We should touch on him because the news is, as we said, the stopped clock was right once a day when it comes to transfer rumors that emanate from Turkey. Listen, we've been doing what we've been doing for a very long time, and the transfer rumor industry has grown a lot over the years. But I think if you were to sort of look back on it, Turkey were ahead of the game. They were ahead of the game. It was just like, there is no player that we will not link to one of our clubs. And there is no player at one of our clubs that we will not link to a club in the Premier League or La Liga or wherever it is. The hit rate, with all due respect to our Turkish friends, has been negligible down the years.
Sure.
It's been negligible. So when I saw these stories about Trossard and Besiktas, I was like, yeah. I mean, it sort of sounds vaguely plausible, but, then the stopped clock was right. And Leandro Trossard looks like he is going to be going to Turkey for a fee of around 20 million euros.
Yes, the transfer rumour was an invention of the Ottoman Empire, I believe. It looks that way. I mean, certainly there's an agreement on a price between Arsenal and Besiktas, and personal terms are being discussed. I don't think they're final yet. I saw Fabrizio saying that Besiktas might even fly out to the US to do that bit with Trossard in person. It looks as if he's off. And it was interesting. I mean, a year has passed. I've done 2 Leandro Trossard sort of transfer stories a year apart. 12 months ago, I did the one about the pay rise.
That was all your fault. Yeah,
that was my fault. Well, there was an explosion of sort of anger and disappointment and frustration. I think presumably because people felt, this means we're not getting the signings that we want, which didn't really prove to be the case in the end. We did go on to sign low ball players, but this time, saying that a fee had been agreed, there was this huge outpouring of kind of, I think, sadness, really, and sort of love for Leo and his contribution. And that seemed to be pretty much across the board. You know, I think everyone, should he go, will feel pretty sorry to see him go, even if they think it's the right thing.
Yeah, you know, I remember when you wrote that story, and I remember writing a blog about it and trying to sort of rationalize the idea of like, well, why are you giving him a pay rise and not an extension? And I think, you know, what people maybe didn't take into account was the idea that last summer we got Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri to sign new deals. And those were not necessarily bargain deals, right, when it came to wages and stuff like that. And my contention was that, like, if you've got a player like Trossard who's delivered for you consistently, and all of a sudden 2 breakthrough kids who absolutely deserve their new contracts, there's no question about that, are sort of, I'm not saying they're on a par or parallel with him in terms of wages. I think a way of managing your squad is you know, recognizing when somebody has made a big contribution. So even if you don't extend their deal, a pay rise might be something that they've earned, you know, on their own merits, but also because the pay structure has changed around them. You know, if you're the senior guy and 2 young guys come into your office and they're earning more than you, or, you know, the same as you, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? So I was all right with that. And I think over the course of this season, you know, he had a big lean spell, unfortunately, but also scored 6 Premier League goals, made 6 Premier League assists, and contributed to Arsenal winning the title. And I think when you go back to January 23, it was January 23, and there was the whole Mudryk thing was going on, and, you know, Arsenal were prepared to go very, very far to sign him. Certainly financially, in terms of the fee that was being bandied around, Arsenal were prepared to go there. Thankfully, they didn't or couldn't, because the player was moved to Chelsea, and that deal didn't happen. But, you know, if you can, in hindsight, say, you know what, we dodged a bullet there, and maybe it was a bit mad that we were looking at Mudryk at £100 million or close to whatever that price was. I think you have to give Arsenal credit for the way they pivoted from Mudryk to Trossard, rather. You know, what, a quarter of the price, and we probably got 3 or 4 times the output that we would have from Mudryk. I think he's been an absolutely fantastic signing. I think he's been one of our better technical players. I think we've often talked about him as being one of the best finishers at the club. And in terms of pure value for money and what he's delivered for Arsenal, I think it's been excellent. I think he's just been a really, really, really good signing.
Totally agree. I think he's probably one of the best signings of the Emirates Stadium era, to be frank, in terms of pound for pound what he's delivered. Speaking of pounds, what do you make of the price? I mean, that a lot of the correspondence I've received since then has been people saying this feels like a low price.
But I mean, he's
very good player.
31, isn't he? So, you know, he's heading into the September of his career.
32 in
December.
Before the year is out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I don't think it's terrible
12 months left on his deal as well.
Exactly. I think it's about right for a club in Turkey to buy a player from a Premier League club at 31, nearly 32 years of age. I think it's all right. I think the bigger question for me is like, what are Arsenal thinking now in terms of how they replace him? We've talked about Christos Solis, of course, who's the Greek international from Club Brugge. What's interesting to me is that there is like if you were going to do, those videos you see all the time on YouTube where somebody's doing like a tier list, they'll rank the best Italian coffees and they'll do like a tier list, or the best fucking burrito sandwiches or whatever. I think if you were doing a technical tier list at Arsenal, Trossard is in the top tier. Mm-hmm. And I do worry a little bit at times that technically we lack a bit sometimes. And Trossard had loads of that, skills and quality on the ball and vision and the ability to deliver both in finishes and final third passes. So I do wonder, how if Solis is part of the solution, how much we're going to miss the technical quality of Trossard.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially when you compare us against, for example, Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League final. The level of kind of technical security that they have in their front six or whatever. It's a step on from us, for sure. I personally think it's the right thing to do to sell Leandro Trossard now. If you have that opportunity.
I agree.
I think if you trust your recruitment and your kind of squad management and you have a chance to get some money back on a guy at that age with that contract situation, I do think you take it. But yeah, I think the question of how you replace him is really interesting. My suspicion is it will be Solis. It's not quite a like for like, but there are some parallels there.
It's not get out of your seat and jump up and down signing either, is it?
Nor was Leo, to be fair.
Nor was Trossard, yeah.
Nor was Leo.
Yeah, anyway, listen, I think it's, he's been brilliant for us. He's helped us win the title. He can go off to Turkey and earn a few bob in the final few years of his career, because I think the tax rates there are a lot lower for footballers than they are in the UK. And
that's what's in it for him. You've got to bear in mind, he's got 12 months left at Arsenal. Presumably he'll be offered a 3-year deal, a minimum. Very good money, favourable tax, like you say. Beautiful city to live in as well. So, yeah, I think it probably makes sense for everyone. And I would expect this to progress once Belgium finish their World Cup campaign.
Okay, and who knows when that might be. Just one quick one before we go into the break. There was a big sort of brouhaha since last we talked about the 16-year-old from Leicester, Jeremy Monga, who looked like he was going to be joining Arsenal, but Arsenal have ended up being gazumped, or however it played out, by Manchester City. Some suggestion that we sort of dilly-dallied on the deal. Here's my thing. I can't get too worked up about not signing a 16-year-old, really. I'm much more invested in what we're going to do to bolster this team over the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm not like furious or angry, but is there anything about that deal falling through that on a wider level might concern us or should concern us about the way Arsenal are operating in the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if there was more happening in the market, there probably wouldn't be quite so much focus on Jeremy Monga. You know what I mean? It's almost crazy the degree to which he's been spotlighted, because he's a player not involved in the World Cup. And so there's been quite a lot of reporting and talk around him, which, as you say, for a 16-year-old is unusual. And again, I did see a couple of reports or tweets citing a hijack of Jeremy Monga, which, again, I'm not sure is language we should necessarily apply to a child. But there you go. I think I saw in David Ornstein's report, he kind of cited that the price got away from Arsenal and they kind of stepped away. I was a little bit surprised by that, only because I think you spoke to most people around the deal or who knew the player, and there was an expectation that it would end up costing between 10 to 15 million pounds to get him out of Leicester. And I think City ultimately are paying something like 12.
Is it? And so just to clarify on that, like when you say like 10 to 15 million pounds, that's not like 10 to 15 million pounds directly to Leicester City in terms of a fee. That's like the overall package in terms of what you've got to pay the player, the agent, all of that.
I think that was the fee. I think it was 10 plus 2 was the fee.
Right. Okay.
So it's not inexpensive.
For a 16-year-old, yeah, that's, you know.
Yeah. But this is a guy who, for Leicester, he's a first-team player. I mean, he's played half a dozen Premier League games at the age of 15 when they were last up. And he made 30-odd appearances for them last season, so in the Championship. So it's not like someone who's only ever been in the academy. It's a guy who's playing senior football. So it's not an unreasonable fee for a player of that kind of potential, in my view. I wonder if maybe where this has got away from Arsenal is more on the personal terms side of it that you mentioned. We know City have got a few quid, and I'm sure that, you know, they will have made quite an aggressive pursuit. I think they came in late as well, so Arsenal probably had established a lot of the parameters and the groundwork. As we found out with Eze, sometimes it's easier to be the gazumper in this situation.
Yeah.
Once all the hard negotiating has been done. I also think we've got to weigh the Maresca factor in this. So Enzo Maresca had been the coach at Leicester, had worked with Monga in that time. He'd been part of first team training. They have a relationship. So I think that may have swung it, and who knows what assurances he might have been given about pathways and all sorts of other things. I'm like you. Like, I can't get too exercised about not signing Jeremy Monga. Truthfully, 6 months ago, Andrew, I didn't know who Jeremy Monga was. But I do think we are at an interesting moment in the window where options in the market are beginning to kind of be allocated. You know, like players are sort of making decisions about where they want to be next season. And when your recruitment style is very based around kind of keeping multiple pans on the boil simultaneously, there is kind of a tipping point where I think you have to start committing. And I think we're about there. Do you know what I mean? I sort of think my sense of the market is that this is probably the point where players want a degree of certainty, like not necessarily wanting a deal done, but at least for themselves making their decisions and making their commitments. And that requires commitments on the part of the club too. So the big targets, I'm talking about people like Morgan Rogers or potentially Bradley Barcola, Bruno Guimaraes. I feel like we're at a point where, Arsenal need to know, and those players need to know that that's the plan. I think in terms of actual progress on deals, I think that will be limited, certainly in the public domain, until the World Cup is through. But I'd like to think that there'd be sort of significant movement and decisions and calls being made behind the scenes. And who knows, maybe something like the Trossard deal is what precipitates a bit of that.
Sure.
You know, maybe we see a replacement come in and the dominoes start to fall. I'm certainly not panicking or anything at this point. I don't think there's any need. I think it's still early. But I also think what you don't want is to be trying to keep multiple options on the go and then find them suddenly disappearing off the market.
Sure.
That's what you don't want.
What's that sound? It's Andrea Berta spinning plates like crazy.
It's plates crashing all around.
Yeah, and now all the plates are on the fucking ground. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I think you're right. You know, World Cup is still a factor in all of this. There's a few players gone out and gone home and probably need a bit of rest and recuperation before they make decisions. So it might be a few weeks. But to keep people interested and excited about transfers, we did promise to do our transfer predictions. So
yes.
So I think
will we do that in part 2?
We'll do that in part 2. We're sort of light on questions this week, because it has been relatively quiet. So we'll take up a chunk of part 2 with our transfer predictions and some of your questions right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. Tell me the truth. You've spent all week at the whiteboard writing on your predictions. No, that's not right. I've got to go back to the drawing board on this one. And, you've just put so many hours of effort and work into all of this. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right, Andrew. And the listener can decide, I was reminded of the fact we even had to do this on the Discord approximately 8 minutes before recording. It's one of those two.
I know which sounds more plausible to me, and a man with your work ethic and commitment to the job would surely not have fallen foul of just forgetting all week long and then remembering at the last minute. And certainly that definitely didn't happen to me until you reminded me just before we recorded either. But however, we've done it. How do you want to do this? Like, are we going to do ins and outs? Are we going to tot up the money? Like, I haven't gone big on sort of, when it comes to ins, I haven't really gone big on names as much as positions. Like, I think we know maybe one of the names for sure. Beyond that, there's still a lot of plates spinning, as we heard in part 1. And then in part 2, obviously, we know who might leave, so we can try and apply some value to those.
Yes. I think let's do it like that. Should we do outs first, I think?
Okay, let's do outs first.
As we just discussed Trossard. I've got Trossard on there.
Right, I also have Trossard on there.
£17 million, I've called that fee.
All right, well, I'm going in euros. Euros.
Okay, fine. That is your currency. In fairness to you.
Given that I am not in the UK.
You're not from the UK. As we established. We finally established in part 1.
Yes, I also have Trossard for, I have 20 million because that's, basically what you reported. So thanks for doing that for me. I have Norway as well. I have like 3 million euros for Norway.
And this is quite fitting, really, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot Christian Norway was alive.
Yes, and an Arsenal player.
But I'll sell him. Will I sell him? Yeah. I'm going to sell Christian Norway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can get 5 million.
Euros or pounds?
Pounds.
Okay. You're a better salesman. Insane? You're a better salesman than I am, that's for sure.
Okay. By the way, I'm just going to reveal early on that one of my sort of key principles when doing this is that I fundamentally believe less happens than you expect to happen in a transfer window. You know what I mean? Like, generally, we don't sell as many people as we think we could or should sell.
That's true. That's true. But I think there's some good candidates this season, this summer, for departure, because I also have Fabio Vieira being sold.
I do too. How much money have you got us getting for him?
5 million euros.
Bloody hell. That is brutal.
Yeah, well, we're no good at selling, are we? Until such time as we can actually sell well, I'm gonna go low, just to be at least try and be a little accurate. You're going to think I'm insane, but I've gone £12 million sterling. Wow. Well, listen, I hope you're more right than I am.
What I'm using as a guide is that the buyout we included with Hamburg was 20 million euros. Now, admittedly, nobody wants to pay that.
Yes.
Including Hamburg, who quite like Fabio Vieira.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, like, if we could get 15 million euros, that would be okay. I mean, 5 million euros, I'm not saying you're wrong, but it would be very humbling given what we paid for him.
Yeah, it would.
A real disaster, but then I guess it sort of has been. I've got him too.
All right. I've also got Reece Nelson.
Oh, yeah. For me, he's in the Norgard camp of I forgot he existed. Right. I don't think we'll get a fee for Reece Nelson. I'll have him as a departure, but I've not got a fee.
No, I have him down as no pounds or pence or euros. Right. Nothing.
Wouldn't even surprise me if he got another loan and another year on his Arsenal contract. Do you know what I mean? Just some quick fix thing to get him a move.
Oh.
But I just can't imagine, with all due respect, clubs lining up to pay a fee for Reece Nelson.
I agree. I agree with that. That's why I think it'll just be a free transfer move somewhere. Thank you very much. And I hope he gets, a good move. I have Kepa being sold for €6 million. Because I think it's there's a
£5 million release clause.
Yeah. Basically. So I think that's about $6 million.
I've got him as well. Let me tell you this. I've got Ethan Nwaneri on this list.
So do I.
At what figure?
50 million euros, because I had sort of written down 45 million pounds.
That's what I've got, 45 million pounds.
So 50 million, yeah. That's what I've got.
Is that 50 million euros? I suppose once you pay commission on it. Yeah. Well, there we go. We're sort of in the same boat on that one.
Yeah, so I think my total is, because that's as much as I've got going out. Oh, no. Sorry. Gabriel Jesus. Who else?
So I've got a bracket around Gabriel Jesus, and I'll tell you for why.
Uh-oh. Go on.
I just don't necessarily see a buyer. Do you remember David did a news story about a month ago saying Arsenal are looking for 18 to 20 million for Gabriel Jesus? I read that and was like, they're very entitled to ask for that, but I don't see it.
What did we pay for Gabriel? We paid 40 million, something like 45 million for him in 2022, summer of 22.
But at the time, he had 2 knees.
Well, that's my entire point. He was actually good then, physically, and since then, he's had that terrible injury at the World Cup. He's had other injuries. He had that other big injury, the cruciate injury last year. How on earth are Arsenal trying to get anything like 50% of what they paid for him, given that he is, really unfortunately, badly diminished by injury? He's still relatively young, isn't he? He's only 28, 29? Is he?
29 maybe. I think, so what figure did you have against Gabby J?
2 million.
Andrew!
Wow. I just saw, there might...
From a Brazilian club or something.
Or, a Spanish club or something.
£2 million. I mean, you got to remember, whoever takes him has got to pay a big salary. Yeah, that's the problem.
That's it. That's why I just was well, we're not getting any money for this guy. So I just had him down £2 million out of €3 million.
Yeah. I think my bold prediction is going to be that we can't shift him.
Right.
That's my... I'm going to make that my sort of hot sales take. So I'm going to... He's in brackets. He's being deleted from my list.
Okay.
So my list is Trossard, Norgard, Kepa, Vieira, Nwaneri, Nelson. And I think that comes in at £84 million sterling.
Right. I think I've got... So Norgard, Jesus, Vieira, Nelson is another, and a freebie. Nwaneri, Kepa, Trossard. So 20, 28, 78, 80.
It's going to be about the same.
84 million. 84 million euros is what I've...
Oh, okay. So yours is a bit less. Oh, that makes sense because you've sold everyone for about 4p.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I haven't been as...
We'll be reprising the £20 jingle this summer. Interestingly, Andrew, I'm curious, was this an emotional choice or a strategic one? But there's no Ben White on your list.
There isn't.
Nor mine.
No. I feel like I don't have enough information at this moment in time to successfully predict a Ben White departure.
I think that's fair. And also, Jurrien Timber's injured right now. Ben White has had the summer off. I think there might be a value in Ben White at the start of next season.
For sure.
I felt like it was over for him at Arsenal at various points last season, but right now I'm just not so sure. And so on my principle of less happens than we tend to expect, I've also got him staying.
Yeah, me too, at this moment in time. However, I do have something, in terms of my incomings, right? I've broken it down into one of those, two of those, and one of those, basically, right? So I think we're going to sign a defender, sort of a righty-leaning, versatile defender who can maybe play centre-half and who can also play right-back.
Right.
And I've got a budget of, I put 25 million on that one. I think we're going to sign a central midfielder for around 65 million. That was the price I put on that. And then we have two forwards / attacking midfielders. So I think Solis is one that we know, which is about 35 million, it seems to be. And then I've got another one that's sort of between 95 and 100 million.
Okay, interesting.
And then I think we'll get a goalkeeper for free. Just get some goalkeeper from somewhere.
We'll link with the Leeds keeper.
Just go down to Market Road and pick up one of the lads who's, So that's 5 players incoming for, I think, a total of, I don't know, close to 200 million thereabouts. 35 is about 65 million. Yeah, over 200 million. 210, something like that. I'll do the maths while you're telling me what you've got coming in.
So I included Hincapié on my list. So
I didn't.
40 million.
Nah, I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
I don't think that's necessary. We know that one. That's done.
It's only useful in terms of the net spend and the ins and outs because it is very much this summer's money.
Okay, well, fair enough then. Fair enough.
The whole deal was structured in that way, you see.
Right.
So that's about 40 million quid. Then I've got Morgan Rogers.
Right.
You're welcome, everyone. And I've put a price on that of 110 million.
Ooh.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. But with Villa wanting 130, I think we will be tipping over 100 if we want to do it.
Yeah. I think so.
I've got Bruno at 65 million, so that's your central midfielder at 65. I've got Solis at 35 million. I've got a keeper at 8 million.
Right.
And I can't guess what keeper Iñaki Kanya wants. He'll probably bring back Matt Turner. I don't know. It'll just be some bloke he knows from years ago.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
A guy from the Greek 4th division that he had on loan at Brentford for a week. And then I've called it there, and I've called that 258 million of spending, which is a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I, like you, so I've got a bracket on this one too, and it is for a sort of, it's actually a kind of centre-halfy, full-backy player. Like, somebody like an Ezri Konsa or somebody like that. Somebody who can play centre-half, can play full-back, is that sort of very physical profile, can rotate in and out. Somebody like that is that's my sort of Hincapié deal for this summer.
Sure.
Of it might be the extra one we do that we have to find a way to afford somehow.
Just
but for the time being, I'm going to leave that off. But I share your suspicion that it's in play.
Yeah. Just reading Iñaki Kanya's after a goalkeeper called Pablo Manos. Anyway.
Okay.
He's from Villafranca.
Brilliant.
Is that exciting enough? is that a good enough window for the champions? I had quite an interesting discussion with Art on the Arsecast on Friday. And my sort of contention was, like, maybe Morgan Rogers is that player, but it doesn't quite do it for me. You know, I like him. I think he's a good player, but it doesn't quite do it for me, you know, in terms of like the statement signing. You know, the one where as champions, you go out and you say, this is the fucking place you want to be. You're a brilliant player. You want to play for Arsenal. You want to play for the champions. We're going to get to the Champions League final again. We're going to do it. This is the moment, you know, where you go out and you get that kind of like, whoa, fuck that guy. You know, in some respects, the sort of the signing that makes you feel a bit like Eze did last season.
And I know the shirt name and number that everyone's going to want.
Exactly. And I know there was a very sort of specific set of circumstances and everything else. But, you know, I'm not saying I have any right to feel underwhelmed if Arsenal go out and spend £220 million in the transfer market this summer. But I just sort of, I'd love one of those signings that makes you go like, oh, like Mufasa, you know. Do you know what I mean? And it's not there in those names. Mufasa. It's not there in those names for me. And
that's interesting. I would have thought that Morgan Rogers would have tickled your Mufasa bone.
I like him. I think he's good. But, you know, listen, I could sit here next summer and hopefully I'm eating the biggest slice of humble pie that ever existed. But, just, you know, just doesn't quite tickle my Mufasa.
What about, can I just ask sort of out of curiosity, like, what about Bradley Barcola? If you're weighing, you know, because I think you've got two players there who would cost north of 100 million.
Yeah.
If you're weighing Rodgers against Barcola in terms of what they offer and what they would bring to this team, where do you sit on that?
I mean, I think Barcola is a bit more like that for me, but it might just be because he's from France and we're signing him from PSG, and there's a sort of not quite familiarity breeds contempt when it comes to Premier League players, right? But yeah.
Do you think Barcola's more what we need? That's my slight thing. When I look at the team, I'm like, what do we really need? What we really need is someone to play off the left, in my view.
Yes, and somebody with real pace, which I think he has. And I know he can be a bit hit and miss, but, you know, if we're replacing Trossard with Solis, like we didn't talk about Gabriel Martinelli at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, I see him staying as a number 8 now after his positional conversion with Brazil.
Yeah.
He's the left 8 we've been looking for. No, I just think...
like, I don't think he'll go.
Do you know what?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
but I think
we just did our predictions and he wasn't in there.
Yeah, he wasn't in there. I mean, I guess it's not impossible, but like...
We've got an option on the deal to add an extra year. So he's got 12 months currently, but we can stick another 12 months on that. So there's a bit less urgency than with Trossard, and because of the age as well. I think his versatility is really helpful if Mikel Arteta is prepared to kind of embrace that. I have him staying. I have him staying too. So then maybe sort of, you know, if you have a Martinelli for the left. And I know there are people out there who would be, you know, very keen to see a different pacey player on the left than Martinelli, you know. Yeah, it's a really hard one. I mean, if I was sort of doing my dream summer, I'm probably less convinced we need Bruno. Like if we could somehow pull off Rodgers and Barcola, I don't think it's particularly realistic, but if you could, that would feel like you've really refreshed and strengthened the forward line.
I mean, the elephant in the room here for me is, you know, Declan Rice could absolutely be the 6 that Arsenal need. And maybe there is an argument that, given how much he's played and given the burden that's on him, if you have, you know, Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice, your focus should be on more craft and more.
You got Miles Lewis-Skelly as well.
You got Miles Lewis-Skelly, yeah, don't forget about that. Yeah, of course. And Mikel Merino, who's not necessarily a deep-lying midfielder in that way. But I do wonder if, do you think there's an argument to be made that for the sake of Declan Rice's hamstrings and spine and neural bits and bobs, that him as a 6, in kind of the same way Mikel Arteta moved back from being, a very creative number 10 to being a deep-lying midfielder at Arsenal, that kind of base of the midfield trio. Is there an argument to be made that might benefit Declan Rice as well as, like, in inverted commas, solving a problem and allowing you then to, potentially go and bolster the squad in a different way, as you say, with, let's say, Rodgers and Barcola, as unlikely as that is, but in terms of the profile of the players, that's maybe where your focus could be.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rice kind of made that transition in the course of last season, didn't he? I mean, I remember going out to Atleti for that game, and he was almost playing like a third centre-back at times in passages of open play, dropping really deep. And whether it was by necessity or design, that kind of happened. And yeah, I think maybe that could spare him his legs. I mean, I guess the argument for a signing like Bruno is what sort of physical state is Declan Rice going to be in come August? But I have this nagging thing of like, well, we've spent quite a lot of money on Martin Zubimendi for that job, If you look at the amount of money Arsenal have put theoretically into the number 6 position over the last few years, it's chunky, it's considerable. And do we need to be allocating more there? I'm not so sure. And then it's, if Rice is your 6, does Rodgers become a really interesting option as a number 8? Maybe. Maybe so. So there's a lot of moving pieces, as is always the case with Mikel Arteta and Arsenal summers, because you're never quite sure. He's going to evolve the team, but you're never quite sure in what direction.
Well,
apart from the fact that it will involve a left back, that's the only thing you know.
Yeah. We resisted saying that we were going to bring in a left back. So there we go.
Nkapia. We got Nkapia.
That's in this one. Okay. Well, there we go. So you're about 220 million as well on the incomings, and I am too. So, and you're a bit more, maybe, are you? Because of
I was a bit more. I was more like 250.
250 because you've got the Nkapia thing in there as well.
And I had the keeper. I was paying a fee for a keeper.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Just get some lad. He'll be fine. Will we do a few questions?
Let's do a few questions.
Let's do a few questions. Here's one from JMO, Dr. Jimmy P. .bsky.social. And he says, most, if not all, the signings made in Berta's time with us have been either players offered to us or the financially best deal. Talent level seems secondary. Do you think this approach is compatible with what we need to do this summer, i.e. sign ceiling raisers? Do you think that's a fair assessment of what we've done under Andrea Berta?
Well, we're only really looking at one summer for Andrea Berta, aren't we? One window. We didn't do anything in January. And the job of last summer, I think, was to find a way to appropriately allocate resource in such a way that we could bolster across the whole squad. And I think we managed that. And it worked. I mean, they've all got Premier League medals now, so it worked. It was less about the kind of star level signings, your Alexander Isaks or whatever it might be, and more about, what can we spend on the centre forward that enables us to also sign a backup for Bukayo Saka, for example. I do think the demands of this window are slightly different. And that is why I talk about players like Morgan Rodgers or Bradley Barcola, or trying to find a way to land one or two of that sort of calibre of name, because I think that's where we're at now. I think we've got the squad. I think we've got the foundation. We're looking for the stardust, really, and the difference makers and the match winners. So I don't know if it's fair to critique Berta based on one summer in which he did the job that was asked of him, in fairness to him. But it'll be interesting to see how much he's able to evolve and adapt this summer when I feel like the demands are slightly different.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Norwegians. Oh, I thought this was kind of interesting. So Norwegians were having a lot of fun showboating. This is from Mikachu, by the way, on Discord. And they say, Norwegians were having a lot of fun showboating in the last 15 minutes of the Brazil-Norway game. Odegaard bringing out his repertoire of feints, flicks and tricks. After Neymar took exception and swiped Odegaard's legs to get himself booked, I noticed in the ensuing melee that Big Gabby actually got involved with Martin. And it looked like he was very clearly and very angrily telling him to stop taking the piss. Should we be concerned about this, or do you think it'll be water under the bridge when the boys are back at London Colney? Am I reading too much into this?
I think it's just heat of the moment stuff, isn't it? Heat of the moment. Your instinct is to protect your teammate. I mean, I did think Neymar, when he came on, was just a twat, really. I know he sought out Odegaard afterwards and they had a moment, but, he gave him that sort of bump from behind thing as well. It was just, the last dying embers of, his career in 15 minutes of frustration or whatever it was. But I don't really worry about that. I'm just more happy to see Martin Odegaard doing that. That he's confident and he's got the fluency and he's got the rhythm in his game that he feels he can still do that, I don't think it's going to be a case that Big Gabby's going to bear a grudge and take it out on him when they get back for preseason training or anything like that,
No. I think on the one hand, these little confrontations and scraps probably, it's not beyond the realms of possibility they could happen in a training session at a football club. You know what I mean? Like these are highly competitive people. And in Big Gabby's case, quite emotional people as well. The other thing I think of is, I think it was 2006, the incident between Ronaldo and Rooney, where Ronaldo got Rooney sent off and then winked at a teammate. And it was this soap opera that played out over the coming months. What will it be like when they're reunited at training in Manchester?
Yeah.
And I think Rooney later revealed that basically he and Ronaldo had a conversation in the tunnel after the game and it was totally resolved. And there was they both understood that they were just doing whatever they needed to do to get their teams to win. And I think I'm right in saying they had a pretty extraordinary season playing together the next year. So I think this stuff happens and people move on very quickly. I think footballers get it. And I don't think there'll be any issues or grudges. I didn't see the kind of post-match scenes, but it wouldn't surprise me if, while Neymar was weeping, Odegaard and Big Gabby had a sort of moment of reconciliation. I just think this happens on a football pitch.
Yeah.
There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, storm in a teacup kind of stuff. A Nightmare on El Neni Street asks this. Good afternoon, gents. Is the next evolution for Arsenal to move away from a defined number 10, a left winger and a right winger, but 3 players playing behind the front man who can occupy any of those positions at any time? I also think it's no coincidence that our top-level youth graduates are players that can play in multiple positions. For example, Saka, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Ethan, Max. I also wonder whether this may ultimately extend to the number 9 position in the future and we go with an interchangeable front 4.
Yes, I think that's an interesting prospect. I would say when Kai Havertz plays as the 9, there is quite a lot of interchanging that goes on. He likes to drop deep or drop out to the right-hand side. One player we didn't mention, conspicuous by his absence in our transfer predictions, was Julian Alvarez. But, a 9 like that would be a game changer for Arsenal, I think, in terms of the sort of combination play that it would offer. I think there is something to this. I think the ability to rotate and interchange positions would make us more dangerous, less predictable. I mean, I've loved probably my favourite individual player, maybe with the obvious exception of Messi, to watch at this World Cup has been Michael Olise. The way that he plays off the right, but steps into the number 10. I just think he's absolutely outstanding. And quite how the biggest Premier League teams allowed him to escape their clutches, I don't really know.
I think he's quite a singular character, isn't he? So he might well have, had those approaches and had those offers from Premier League clubs, but said, nah, I'll go to fucking Bayern Munich or whatever. Like he's been, how many times did we talk about him on this podcast as a player that, we would love to see in red and white.
So, I think when you watch France play, you do see a lot of that interchanging. And I don't know. Do I see Mikel Arteta really embracing that? I'm not so sure. I think you need the right players, and it needs to be underpinned by a lot of structure and discipline. And but I think it would be an exciting development for this team if we get there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, just maybe to have a little more freedom, and I know without getting into the sort of nuts and bolts of it tactically, the way wide players are told to stay wide, to stretch the pitch, et cetera, et cetera. Does it get too crowded if everybody comes central and then all of a sudden your right winger is, oh, look, he's just tripped over Jurien Timber, who's also playing in the inside right position, and then your centre forward has come over there as well, and it's just a crowded mess. I think you need a high level of talent and a high level of coaching and intelligence, to make that work. But I think there are always things that you have to look at changing and look at ways to be different. And listen, the big example, wasn't it, was like Zinchenko when he first arrived at Arsenal, and nobody quite knew what to do with Zinchenko until they did. And then you have to figure out something else. So I think a job of a manager is, part of that is trying to figure out ways to make yourself less predictable to the opposition and to find ways to cause them problems and pull their players out of position, so the players that you get into good positions can cause them damage. So that I thought that was interesting, by the way, when you mentioned Julian Alvarez, just that idea of Arsenal doing something like that in the centre forward position for everything that it would say about, how we've built the squad would be a really fascinating development in the transfer market. Like, I don't necessarily expect Arsenal to sign a centre forward, but if they did, I think that would be really interesting, because there'd have to be a casualty along the way, I think. But like I said, I don't really expect it, but you never know. I guess you never know.
And would that be... I've just realised I've got to go very shortly, Andrew. Sorry about that. But
no, that's okay.
I was going to ask quickly, would a signing like Alvarez, would that be in that category of kind of eye-catching signings that you would associate with?
I kind of think so, yeah. It's sort of like, the way when we bought Jose Antonio Reyes in the January of 2004, and he's coming into a team with Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry and Kanu and Sylvain Wiltord and Jeremy Aliadier and Freddie Ljungberg and Robert Pires, and then it's like, we're going to buy this like hot shit kid from fucking Sevilla. The sort of signing where you go, do Arsenal really need that? But maybe they don't, but I'm glad we're doing it because it gives us even more, and he obviously played a part in helping the team go invincible. So yeah, that would be a very, very interesting transfer development for me. So we'll see if that guy ever stops spinning the plates. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, look, I'll let you go because I know you do have to go and do your Chicago work and stuff. Yeah. So to everybody, thank you indeed for being with us as always. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the very well thought out and entirely accurate predictions that we've provided for you. Take it easy, folks. We'll have something for you later in the week, and we will chat to you on the next one.
Bye-bye.